So today, we're going to dive into a technology that promises to do nothing less than rewire our entire economy. It's called decentralization. It's a truly revolutionary idea, for sure, but it's also facing a pretty complex set of growing pains. Let's break it down.
And this quote from Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin, it just nails the core promise. For decades, the internet created these incredibly powerful middlemen, right? Companies like Uber, Google, and Facebook. Well, decentralized tech aims to disrupt those disruptors, basically by cutting out the need for that central platform altogether.
So how in the world does it do that? Well, for the last 30 years or so, we've had what you could call an Internet of Information. When you send an email or a photo, you're not sending the original, you're just sending a copy. Which is fantastic for information, right? But it's a total disaster for anything with real value, like money or assets. Blockchain technology is designed to fix this, to create a new Internet of Value, a system where digital things can actually be unique, scarce, and securely sent without just being copied.
And the engine behind all of this? That's the blockchain. The easiest way to think about it is like a shared digital notebook or a ledger that's copied and spread across thousands of computers. Every transaction is a new line item, and it's cryptographically locked to the one before it. And because it's shared and secured like this, no single person can just go in and change the past. This is what creates trust without needing a big central authority like a bank.
Okay, so the very first, and you could say most explosive place this Internet of Value showed up was finance. And the goal? It was huge. To rebuild the entire financial system from scratch. But this time, without the traditional gatekeepers. First, let's just quickly remember how the old world works. You know, when you send money or try to get a loan, you're actually relying on this whole web of middlemen. Your bank, their bank, payment processors. Each one of those steps adds fees, it adds time, it adds complexity. The whole thing is built on having to trust these giant third parties.
Okay, now let's look at the new world. Blockchain basically replaces that whole tangled web with a single shared ledger. So instead of going through all those middlemen, your transactions can happen directly from you to someone else, peer to peer. And that shift, from centralized to decentralized, that's the key that unlocks everything else.
So the difference in how they perform is just crucial. On one hand, you've got traditional finance, which is all about intermediaries. And that means things move slower and cost more. But then you have decentralized finance, or DeFi. It's peer-to-peer, which promises way faster settlements, much lower costs, and truly global access for pretty much anyone with an internet connection. And that's really DeFi in a nutshell. It's this whole ecosystem of financial apps built on the blockchain that do everything a normal bank does. You know, lending, borrowing, trading, earning interest. But they do it in a way that's open, automated, and peer-to-peer. It's finance, just without the financial institutions.
But of course, the revolution didn't just stop at finance. The next big wave brought a whole new idea: verifiable digital ownership, through something called NFTs. And this is where things get complicated. This is where we run into the first of our big discontents, a massive puzzle around what it actually means to own something online.
$69.3 million. That's how much a single NFT by the artist Beeple sold for at a Christie's auction. This wasn't some niche internet thing anymore. This was a massive event that put billions of dollars on the table and forced the whole world to ask what digital ownership really means.
Which, brings us to the huge and honestly super confusing question. You've spent your money, you've got the tokens sitting in your digital wallet, but what rights do you actually have? What did that $69 million really buy you?
And get this, the confusion isn't just on the buyer's side. A recent survey of NFT creators found something pretty mind-blowing. 68% of them, the very people making and selling this stuff, thought that when they sold an NFT, they were also selling the copyright to the art. They were wrong.
And here's where the big disconnect is. See, a copyright is actually a whole bundle of different rights. The right to make copies, the right to distribute it, the right to make new things based on it. In a typical NFT sale, basically none of those core rights are transferred. Usually, the buyer just gets a very limited right to display the art, and that's about it.
So here's the absolute key takeaway. The best way to think about it is this: an NFT isn't the art, it's a publicly verifiable digital certificate of authenticity for the art. You own the certificate, but the artist almost always keeps the actual copyright unless there's some other specific license involved.
And this whole mess over ownership, it actually points to a much deeper, more fundamental problem for the entire decentralized world.
How do you make decisions and coordinate changes when nobody is in charge? This is what we call the governance conundrum.
So what you're looking at here is the fundamental trade-off at the heart of this entire debate. In a centralized world, like Apple's App Store, Apple is obviously in charge. They can push updates easily, but they also have the power to hold up developers by just changing the rules on them. Now, in a decentralized world like Bitcoin, no one person has that power, which is great. It protects everyone. But the trade-off is a massive risk of coordination failure when the system actually needs to change.
So why does that coordination fail? Well, it's because in a system that's truly decentralized, every single participant, every miner, every developer, every user has what amounts to veto power. They can simply refuse to adopt a new software update. It's the ultimate form of protection, sure, but it can also lead to total paralysis, making it incredibly hard to roll out essential upgrades or fix critical bugs.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theoretical problem. This governance issue leads to major real-world headaches. Without clear leadership, it becomes incredibly difficult to deal with regulators, to coordinate security when there are hacks and fraud, to solve scaling problems, or even to improve what's often a really bad user experience.
So, with all these deep challenges, where does all this go from here? Well, the final debate really centers on whether this new technology is going to completely replace the old system or if it's going to find some way to live alongside it.
Right now, the most likely path forward really looks like a hybrid one. I mean, we're already seeing big traditional financial companies starting to use DeFi protocols just to make their own back-end systems more efficient. The next steps will probably be hybrid products, things like tokenized real estate or stocks. And stablecoins will probably act as the critical bridge, connecting the old financial world to the new one.
And that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. These decentralized systems promise to be radically efficient, but they also bring all new kinds of risk. It really forces us to ask, are the slow, clunky, inefficient parts of our current system just bugs that need to be fixed? Or are they actually features, checks and balances that give us a kind of stability that maybe we're not quite ready to give up?